Okay. This is the regular Town of Woodbridge Board of Finance meeting for July 20th, 2017, and this is the first meeting of the 2017-2018 fiscal year with, as it's been referred to, the new Board of Finance. But before we talk about the new Board of Finance, when we last met on June 15th, we didn't know who was coming back and who wasn't, so I wasn't able to, and we weren't able to properly thank our outgoing members, namely Andy Esposito and Karen Cusick. So I would like to, at this point, if it's all right, just acknowledge their service. They were amazing members. They worked hard. They worked for the good of the town, and they will be sorely missed. And I just would like, on behalf of the Board of Finance, and I guess I could say on behalf of the town, thank them for their service. They were in fact excellent members. So just like to acknowledge them. Okay. And again, this is the new Board of Finance, and we now have joining Paul, myself, and Sandy. We have Andy Pell's Zoning Board. You're
Yes.
Planning and Zoning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Susan, of course, comes to us from the Board of Selectmen. And Tom hasn't been on a board for a while, but he's also a former Board of Selectmen member. And I made the remark before we sat down that I'm positive, at least in my many years, this is the first time we've had 3 former selectmen, because Sandy also served on the Board of Selectmen. So we've got 3 former members of the Board of Selectmen on our board. So I guess they wanted to come over to the good side. But, before we get started, of course, we should probably just update the town on where we're at. Tony, interrupt me at any time. We, as you probably all know, we have a budget, the town does, with approximately a 1.8% increase, which we worked very hard on. And tax bills were sent out, reflecting the mill rate, and also a 32 mill rate on the cars, on the autos, which the difference was roughly 7 mills the state's supposed to make up to us.
Correct.
Which could in fact not happen.
Right.
Now, if in fact that doesn't happen, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to be talking about that.
We'll talk about that, yeah.
But Town of Hamden, where I have my business, sent out real estate tax bills, but did not send out car tax bills.
Really?
They held them back. Not
Right,
knowing.
I know a few places that have done that.
Other towns put $1 million in their budget to plan on what the state might do to them, which I don't know if that's a good idea. So, but what we'll be doing once we know where we're at, it seems like things are looking a little better. But if we get hit with the teachers' pensions, what number are we looking at there, Tony? Just that one item?
About 1.2.
1.2 million?
Yeah.
So that would be a major hit. If the state, one of the proposals for the state was to have the towns pick up the portion of the state teachers' pensions that they normally pay. Now, if they do that, I don't even want to imagine what Bridgeport and Haven are going to have to pay. It'll be devastating. So there'll be more to come. When the time comes, it could be as simple as, if it's not that much, we can take it out of fund balance.
Right.
We can send out a special one-time tax bill. I don't know how that would work with cars in.
Yeah.
That would be my preference, but
There's
let people know.
There's also some discussion about special legislation to allow us to change the second real estate bill.
Second real estate. I heard
So
that.
not send out a separate tax bill completely, but just amend the second bill.
Right.
That's another
I would, like
option.
I said, prefer to send out a separate bill so everybody knows the impact of the state decision on their taxes. So, but we'll see. We had this once before when Hamden had their problems.
Right.
Years ago, we sent out a separate tax bill to cover their deficit, but that wasn't that much.
But
It wasn't that much.
yeah.
So I'm sure I don't know who would make that decision, Board of Selectmen or Board of Finance, or both.
It's unprecedented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use that word a lot, unprecedented. But it will be coming, so that will be one of the first things we'll be dealing with. So, public comments. I don't see anybody. And now, one of my least favorite things to do is election of chairman and vice chairman. Would anybody like to nominate someone for chairman?
I'd like to nominate Matt Giglietti.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Is there any other nominations? Okay. I will then make a motion to close nominations.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye? Okay. All those in favor of Matt Giglietti, please signify by saying aye. Thank you. Okay. And I would like to nominate Sandy Stein as vice chairman.
I'll second that.
Okay. there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll make a motion that we close nominations for vice chairman. Second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, now we can move on. As we go through this, just for the sake of, I think Susan has seen us, but for Tom and Andy's sake, I'll just explain some of the things that we do here and why we do them that way. But always the first report is the report of Tony, which is Tony is the Administrative Officer, Director of Finance, and he's going to go through a bunch of items for us. So, Tony?
Yep, thanks. The first item is the update on the last year's budget. And the last year's budget result is a budgetary surplus of $634,000. At the time of this report, we had a number of things that were outstanding and we were not sure of, more specifically Beecher School and a number of other items that have since resolved themselves and do not require contingency. So, not in that number is the contingency balance of 271. So you have to add that to 634.
That's amazing.
Okay? 271. Yeah.
71.
It's down,
So-
down a little further in your package,
So,
which we'll be talking about.
and we weren't sure about a number of items that were happening towards the end of the year. So as a result, I didn't include it in there.
Okay.
But those have resolved themselves. And Beecher School, for instance, was able to cover their outstanding deficit in their budget. So that was no longer an issue.
Yep.
And as we went through the year, we made a number of adjustments and did a number of things to try to reserve as much as we could, so that we would increase our fund balance, so that in the event that we had to make up a deficit from the state, we would have a bigger fund balance. And I think we talked about that throughout the whole year. And so, as you can see, the result of that was very positive.
So this makes it much more likely that we would use our fund.
Correct.
balance.
Right.
Depending on how much.
Well, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not saying for everything,
Yeah.
but there's
Or it could be some
obviously-
mix.
Section,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, there's
Yep.
obviously
A combination.
money
Yep.
there.
And as we've discussed in the past, that's what fund balance is for. Unusual
Yes.
circumstances like this.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So, some of the highlights: intergovernmental revenue is state revenue. We have a surplus about about $50,000. We received that special ed excess cost grant of additional $108,000, which helped there. Interest income is projected $100,000 surplus, just generally due to increased rates. Taxes, we had some late back tax collections, which has generated a surplus of about $100,000 there, so that was good news for us. And the other revenue item we have is the surplus of the sale of golf equipment, which is about $70,000. We've talked about that before at prior meetings. In our expenses, the general administration line has a surplus, $10,000. That's due to insurance savings and some utility savings. We had a warmer winter than we'd anticipated, so you'll see that's a common theme throughout this report. The assessor's office had a vacant position earlier in the year, which generates about a $10,000 surplus there. Center building, again, utilities, about $11,000 in savings in center building. Police department has about a $25,000 surplus, primarily due to vacant positions, and so that's just the case there. Waste management has about a $30,000 surplus. We had some lower, mostly bulky waste and recycling, lower tonnage than we had budgeted for. Parks department, as you know, we eliminated the parks foreman position halfway through the year. So there's a savings of $22,000 in that position, and we did not fill that position. The library had staffing vacancies throughout the year and some electricity savings, which has generated a surplus there of about $15,000. And debt service, about $122,000 due to the timing of the Beecher School remediation project. That has been actually filed and that process has begun, so we're hopeful to find out the result of that probably, I think he said 9 months from the application, so probably somewhere in December or January. And finally, benefits is surplus of about $100,000. And that's primarily because we had some vacant positions that we either didn't fill right away, or in a number of cases, coverage changes. A few of our new hires already had insurance from somewhere else, so those are the highlights.
Any questions for Tony on that?
Yep. Great results.
Yeah,
Really
we
terrific.
kept careful eye.
Okay. Status of the FY17 audit?
The
Which is early on, I'm sure, right?
yeah, the McGladrey was out for or RSM now. They were out for their field review, and so they tested, did all their testing. They did grants. They tested payroll and payables and taxes, receipts. They did most of their testing. So they come in, they'll pick a random sample of each, and then they'll test, make sure all the procedures were followed. In case of payroll, make sure that increases, someone's salary has to come from somewhere, whether it's a union contract or Board of Selectmen minutes or something of that nature. So far, so good.
Woodbridge Board of Ed financial report. This is something we get every month. Sandy usually reports on it.
Right. We didn't
Liaison.
actually have a meeting,
Okay.
so these are the, this is the first time I saw this.
Okay.
So,
All right.
So you could see from the financial
Yep.
report,
they actually have
we have a little surplus,
Surplus.
a
correct?
little surplus,
Yep.
which is amazing given how far down the line they were
Right.
earlier in the year.
Right.
It's about $13,000.
Yep.
I don't think they've actually been in the black like this
First time
in
this
quite a
year.
while. And a lot of this was due to salary and benefit savings, due to some early retirements they hadn't counted on, the benefits associated with that, and changes in people's benefits, much like for the town, in
Right.
terms of people choosing
Right.
other options.
Right, right.
I will point out, though, that the special education unanticipated costs were $363,000 more than what was budgeted. So they managed to cover that in their accounting for this year. And again, they budgeted only what they knew about at the time. There is already some underfunding of special education going into fiscal year 18. But they did a terrific job.
Yep.
So they budgeted for what they thought, and they received, they were over what, 360s?
They were 363, but any cases that had come
Uh-huh.
before they actually
Right.
submitted their budget
Right.
are in the budget, but there are a few additional
Right.
cases that are not included in that.
So we budgeted for the excess cost revenue based on what we knew, and we had
Right.
received an extra
Yep.
$100,000, so that sort of ties into that.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I know at the Board of Selectmen meeting, Bob Gilbert, the superintendent, indicated that they were going to be having a problem starting the next year, but he wouldn't indicate how much. He said he had to develop some more of that, so I'm sure we'll be hearing about that.
Yep.
Note bond sale update.
So we had a note sale for 2 issues. The first was the tax exempt, that's Lot A, it says it on the top. And that was to fund the remaining, because we don't have final grant numbers from the state, we had to keep a little bit of the amount for the project outstanding in notes until we know exactly how much we're going to get from the state, and then we can finalize the funding. So it was just an FYI more than anything, but you can see where the short-term rates are. 1.44 is the rate for, it's because it's a smaller issue, that's why it's a little higher.
This is the 4.9 is the country club, right?
Yeah, correct. Then the taxable, you can see the spread between
Yeah,
tax
those are
exempt and taxable,
taxable,
yeah. The taxable notes for the country club, that's how much we have remaining, and selectmen decided to keep that as a note as opposed to a bond. Note gives you flexibility, should there be any activity on the country club, should there be any opportunities to reduce the debt and or decide on the taxable versus tax exempt issue. And so the selectmen decided to roll the notes 1 more year. When you do that, you take a risk that possibly the market increases.
Sure.
But So anyway, that's where we are with the,
Hasn't in a while,
yeah.
so.
It's a little higher than last year.
So do we know who we chose here? Does it say who we chose?
Jeffries was the winner.
Okay.
You can see the Nick is the net interest cost.
Right.
And you see how close it is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I think all three of those top three probably had the same customer,
Sure.
which is usually like Fidelity or some sort of a,
Got it.
yeah. And so you could see they all were, that's why they were so close.
Okay, so those are good rates.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, talk to us about this sweeper. I remember we talked about this.
So we usually had in our budget about $30,000 for sweeping, and the decision was made in the budget process to eliminate the funding for a contractor to come in and sweep and to purchase a sweeper and fund it with, town would fund the sweeper, take a little bit of a loss in the first few years, but then the return on it, of course, is great because then we don't have to pay a contractor. So we went out to bid, selectmen approved the purchase, $243,548, which was the winning bid. So the town is, and you can see the leasing rate is 2.45, that was the winner. So.
What's the source of funds for this, Tom?
So what'll happen is each year in the capital budget, the lease payment will be in the budget,
Okay.
and then that's the source of funds.
Okay, and how about the initial 75,000?
The initial 75,000 was put in the budget last year, in the
Oh,
year
it was?
before, yeah.
Oh,
So we had that from,
I don't remember that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So we were paying $30,000 a year, so I'm assuming this thing's gonna last a while.
Oh yeah, well
know,
what we have now is, I think, it's no longer functional, but I think it was 1973 maybe.
Right.
So this should last us a long
And he'll
time.
also be able to.
1973?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
What?
yeah.
It was, yeah, it was pretty old.
That's unbelievable.
And rather than have a,
Yeah, well, I don't know. but-
Yeah, but
and rather than have a
Still.
contractor come in at set times, we can run this anytime we want.
Correct, for anything we want, we can
If
go to.
something happens,
Or if there's a fire scene
I
that
don't
needs a
wanna say it, if
sweeper,
there's a
or if there's a
hurricane or
hurricane
something.
needs a sweeper, right?
so we have to, I know,
Yeah,
usually when I say that, we'll have one
Don't say
tomorrow.
hurricane.
We'll have one tonight.
Oh,
correct.
All right, so then the lifespan of this thing is quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah,
I know Warren lobbied for it.
he did.
It's pretty, okay,
so he gets a scale and he gets the sweeper.
yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah,
good.
Where do we
for
stand
one
with the
year.
scale?
We have held off
We've
on,
held off on that, right?
yeah, we held off on some of the more, the larger capital purchases until we figure out what's going on with our state funding.
For those of you who don't know, Warren wants a scale to weigh the trucks to see how much
For the-
stuff they're
For the
bringing
transfer
in.
station.
Right.
Yeah,
He thinks he could, it would be beneficial to the town to know exactly how much trash is coming in, so.
Scales for the transfer station.
yeah,
Yeah, well, in theory, there's a revenue stream associated
There is.
with
A lot of-
the scale. so-
Yeah.
yeah. More of like a transfer of revenue.
Yep.
Because currently, a lot of towns will pay, when the private haulers come in, they'll pass on the cost of our, which is like $62 a ton. They'll pass that along to the private haulers. So basically, you're passing on the tip fees that we pay out of our budget to the private haulers. That's what a lot of towns do.
Surrounding towns have them?
Yeah. I'm not sure about Bethany. They don't. So, but yeah, a lot of surrounding towns have them.
Yeah, Warren was pretty adamant about wanting it.
Yeah.
He felt it would be a definite benefit to the town.
Plus, when you don't have a scale, you don't know how much
Yeah,
Right.
is actually winding up at the garbage plant.
yeah.
In other words, you don't know what left at the plant. It's the same tonnage that winds up.
That we're getting charged for.
Right.
Where do you want to put it?
It's in a, you put it, there's a spot, he's got a spot for it, and
Yeah, it's just a flat.
it's in the ground. It's
Just
like
a flat thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Right.
like it's flush to the ground.
Yeah,
You
just
drive
drive
on it,
on
you
it,
drive
yeah.
off it.
Front wheels, back wheels, and it registers.
It's got to be installed though.
Yeah.
And it's-
Yeah.
But again, that's on hold at this point.
Yeah, I figured we would just keep it on hold until,
Right.
yeah.
Anything else, Tony?
No.
Any questions for Tony?
So you want to, I think last time we did a lease for the air packs,
Yeah.
voted on it?
You want to vote on this?
Yeah,
And this would be for the,
So do we need to vote on this or no?
I would say, yeah.
On the
On what
lease?
point?
The
Yeah,
lease.
yeah,
on the lease of 168?
yeah.
I will move acceptance of the request for a lease for the sweeper in the amount of $168,548.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Now we have funding requests. Most of these are last year, 16, 17, so there's only one for this year. So we'll go through these. And this is the form I was referring to, this first 2 pages. This is basically what happened all last year, how much was in there. And the reason it was so much more than this year is we had labor contracts that we had to negotiate. And again, that's part of the reason why we have 271,000 left. The contracts came out better than anticipated. But again, the first 6 of these funding requests are for 2016-17, so we'll get started with those. The first one is, let me explain to you too what I do here. I always make the motion to approve just to get a second and get it up for discussion. So it's not, my motion to approve is not an indication that I'm in favor or not in favor. It's just, let's discuss it, okay? So I will move acceptance of line item transfer 1617-38 in the amount of $6,000, and this is to replace furniture at the police department where there's a memo, which we usually get, and he's got 3 mismatched desks and conference room chairs that are 30 years old. So again, this is within his department, so he's not asking for additional funding. So do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Do you have anything to say, Tom?
Just that this was something he was probably going to put in next year's budget.
Yeah.
But figured he
That's
had
one of the
money.
ones we moved up.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So I guess they're taking all this from,
Yes, it's a line item.
It's all from the police department.
Right. The main
taking it out,
account is the electric street stoplights, primarily because we moved the tower that we used
oh,
to
I got
pay a
you,
rent
they're
on.
taking 4.11 to pay for the furniture. Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, they're moving money out of different line items into that line item.
Gotcha. It's been a while.
Yeah, we'll get stuff.
You're gonna catch up really fast.
When you see line item transfer, that's a good thing. That means
Yeah.
we're not spending any more.
That's right.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Next is, and Tony, we'll talk about this one. This is a request for funding from contingency, which again is in this report that's right here. And it's for the purchase and installation of the antenna system for the new police tower. And again, I'll move acceptance of request for funding 1617-39 in the amount of $44,442. Tony, you just want to run through this?
Sure. The town received a grant to replace the tower, police tower out here. And the grant covers the replacement of the tower and a structure to house the radio equipment. And the tower is at the end of its useful life and we need to replace. Susan's on the committee and knows all about it. The one thing the grant did not replace and would not pay for is the radio antenna systems that for the top of the tower, which also need to be replaced, primarily because the state borrows money for these types of grants. It's a capital grant, it's a 20-year grant, and the life expectancy of that radio stuff is not quite, it's not a 20-year life expectancy, it's changed. So that's primarily the reason why those aren't covered under the grant. And so this was something we were going to put in the budget, but we're hoping we had some contingency for it. So we did not, but it's something critical for that project.
I would just add, Tony, that we moved from day one to get to cover the
We did,
antenna
yeah.
equipment.
Yeah.
So that it was never contemplated that it would be covered by the grant.
Right, correct, yeah, right.
Now, does this service the fire department at all? or is
It
this
does.
only-
Services the simulcast radio system that services fire and police and EMS.
Does it also the town as well?
The Public Works?
Public Works.
Not yet.
No.
We're that's part of the larger project where we're looking to replace the simulcast system itself.
Okay.
This is just for the tower.
Okay.
Because we had a grant for it, so instead of including it in project, we had a grant. We figured we'd do it now and get it replaced.
So does this use up the grant in total?
No, there's about $160,000 left in the police department. We talked at the selectmen about putting in a shelter for the cars, for the police cars. Carport. Yeah.
grant has to be used in a specific...
By the spring.
Right, that's why I was
Yeah,
asking. if
and it has to be
this
used by the
is
spring, yeah.
Okay.
So we're moving forward on a carport.
Any other questions on this? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Next, there are actually two attached here, 1617-40 and 1617-41. And this is from the registrar's office. One is a request, and the second one is a line item transfer, so I'll do them separately. I'll move acceptance of request for funding 1617-40 in the amount of $9,387. And again, this is to fund deficit in the registrar of voter budget, largely due to additional hours for election audit and employee training.
In the fall elections also.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Any discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And the second one is a line item transfer within the registrar budget for $4,650. And I'll move acceptance of line item transfer 1617-41 in the amount of $4,650.
Second.
Any discussion on this? It's the same basic thing. All those in favor? Aye. Next is, let's see, 1617-42, and this is a request for funding from the Fire Commission to fund a deficit in medical expense line in the Fire Commission budget. And then there's also another one attached to this?
Yeah, the repair and maintenance, yeah.
All right, let's do them separate. I'll move acceptance of request for funding 1617-42 in the amount of $10,026.
Second.
Okay, Tony, why don't you run
So
this by us?
if you remember, maybe halfway through the year, the chief advised that he was going to be running over in medical, most likely medical expense due to the large number of physicals that he had to do and repair and maintenance of the equipment, which is has had a number of repairs. And we discussed at that time to see how much he can take out of his budget at the end of the year. And I believe it was around $30,000 was what we discussed. And you can see that the department has covered $22,482 out of its budget, and so the request is $10,000 from additional funds.
The medical is a little bit over because he's got some more volunteers that joined the force, so he's got to have them have the medical exams and so on.
Right.
And they're costly.
So I just think it would be helpful to have the backup
Oh, okay.
detail with this.
We could do that.
Because it was a while ago that we looked at this.
Right.
So just so that's associated with the request.
Okay, we can do that. That's part of the record?
Yeah,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
part of the record,
Right.
I would accompany what this
Yep,
actually.
we can do that. Okay.
Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, next is a line item transfer. And this is just, I guess, Tony, it's a mishmash to balance
thing.
different line items.
This is part of the same request.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just there's a number of line items he was able to put off some purchases and
Okay.
hold off till next year, that sort of thing.
I'm really pleased that they could come up with $22,000. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move acceptance of line item transfer 1617-43 in a total amount of $22,482. Any further discussion on this? Again, there's a page here where basically it explains where the money's coming from. Okay. The biggest part of this one, I guess, is repairs and maintenance.
Right. It's for repairs to the fleet.
Okay. Anything else on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's it for last year. And again, if you look at your little report here, with all those, we're still left with $271,000, which Tony referred to.
Right.
Yep.
Now,
It's amazing. I can't remember a year like this.
I Yeah, well, it's because we have put a chunk away for labor
The contracts.
negotiations.
No, I understand,
contracts
but
came in
again,
well.
not needing that,
Yeah.
it's great.
Which is why we take a hard look at whatever we need to balance the budget. We can certainly take it out of there.
Yep.
10% is a healthy number, I think, for fund balance. Okay, now, as far as 2017-18 goes, as you can see, we have a very, in my opinion, $200,000 contingency. In a budget our size is not a lot, but we're going to work with it. So, the first item we have here is, we might have Beth talk about it.
I'd be happy to.
Okay. This is a request for, for those of you who don't know, Betsy Yagla, our administrative assistant, is very pregnant, and
With twins?
twins, and she will be leaving maybe the end of this month.
The babies
Who
will let
knows?
us
Could be
know.
tomorrow.
Yeah, could be tomorrow. I got a call from her this
So-
afternoon and was panicking that something, because
And so this
she's
is-
trying to work from home, so.
So this is for a temporary full-time assistant. So
Correct.
I will move acceptance of request for funding 1718-01 in the amount of $15,000.
Second.
Okay, why don't you explain this to us?
Okay, you started the explanation, and I talked to Tony right after I was elected about perhaps bringing someone in, because we knew Betsy was going to be taking some time off. And at this point, Betsy will probably, if everything is okay, she won't be back till after Thanksgiving. And I am amazed at how much these ladies get done in the, I have Jerry Shaw and Betsy, and Tony, of course, but he's using them as well, and it's amazing how much they get done. It's very busy in there. So I spoke with Tony, and I spoke with Betsy, and I spoke with Jerry Shaw, and I spoke with Sheila and asked her if she would come in and work temporarily full-time. And I can just give you her background. She's got about 25 years of professional work in strategic communications, website development, marketing. We all know Sheila, public relations. And she has been working with Betsy. I think she started working July 5th, is that right?
That's
Yep,
about right.
That's what I wrote down.
Yeah.
On a note from what I've heard during the campaign, our constituents told me they wanted timely communication and transparency, and I think having Betsy not be here for 4 months, none of that would happen. And I think it's very important that we communicate, and in addition to getting the work done that has to be done on a daily basis, and believe me, it's amazing how much we do get done. We want to expand our town website, our newsletter, e-news blasts, and I believe that having this happen will contribute to that effort. So I brought Sheila in, and now we have to pay for it. So it was Tony's suggestion to transfer $15,000 from contingency to the Board of Selectmen line item, which you mentioned already. So,
And there are no benefits attached to this?
no.
Okay. And when Betsy gets back, Betsy takes back over.
As far as I know, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what
Who
happens with
knows?
Betsy.
Yep.
Right, right.
Yep. Having twins.
Twins is daunting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not going to say never, because
Okay.
no.
But it's just during her absence, and then when she comes back,
If she comes back.
if she comes back,
Right.
but then would be opened if she did. Or would
We'll
just-
figure it out. I haven't made any. We haven't made any decisions beyond November, correct?
Correct.
We'll just see what happens.
Right.
Any other questions?
Betsy's planning to come back.
Correct.
Let's
Yeah.
put it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't want to speak for her.
Yeah, it's important to understand that Betsy is planning on coming
Correct.
back.
Yes.
This is her position.
Correct.
And during her absence, she's off salary.
No, she's got some accrued time
She
she
has
can
some
use.
accrued time, and her
Yeah.
benefits continue on.
Correct,
So-
which is
Correct.
why we have to transfer money.
That's why we need the transfer.
Right.
You're right. Mhm.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye.
They have to say aye, because she's having twins.
Aye. Okay.
No, it's oi, oi.
Oi.
Sorry.
She will be out of commission for a while, speaking from experience.
I only had, oh, you had twins,
You had
that's
twins?
right.
Did you really?
That's
I didn't know that.
right.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
They're 32 now.
Really? I didn't know you had
Wow,
twins.
that's right, I forgot about that.
Wow,
Yeah.
great.
Yep.
Yeah, wow. Just,
Just take it a day at a time. And then figure it out.
that's why I don't want to say
No,
one way or another in
you just
November,
never know.
because
Yep.
I want to leave it open for her to make the right
Yeah.
decision. I don't want to commit for her, one way or
But
another.
her job is open.
Yeah,
That's the point.
exactly,
Her, that's
correct.
the-
Yep.
Okay, next is approval of minutes. Now, this is curious. What happens here?
Yeah, right.
Who can vote?
So I would,
Only the
I
Jerry
would
were there.
abstain because I wasn't here.
I know.
I will tell you what Jerry Shaw told us to do,
Yeah.
because we had a set left over from the old board.
Yeah,
She said you just make a motion to accept them,
okay.
and you don't vote on them. If you,
You know,
I don't know.
I
What
gotta
she
tell
said
you,
to
last,
She did, yeah.
at
Yeah.
our last Amity meeting,
I don't know.
we've always had this opinion, I guess, that if you're not at the meeting, you can't vote for them. And yet, this Tom Hurley, who's supposedly the Roberts Rules expert, said in his research, if you read the minutes and understand them, you can vote on them, even if you weren't there. I never heard that before.
I never heard that.
Yeah,
We did the same thing at TPZ.
really?
We were short on members at a particular meeting. That's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
You can read them and
Yeah.
approve or disapprove.
I mean, think about it. If you read the minutes and you understand them, it doesn't matter. Usually if someone's not and they abstain, but I didn't know what to do tonight because we've got three.
We just
so
were
we'll
advised
just-
by Jerry Shaw to just accept
We'll
them,
just
but I
accept
don't know. You're the chair.
Well, let's see.
It's your board.
Well, let's see. If it's 303, then it passes. In other words, we have a quorum.
We do.
So if it passes 3 in favor, none opposed, and 3 abstentions, I think it passes. Right?
I think so.
If not, they'll come and put us in jail.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
For the
That's the
minutes.
minutes, it's not like we're voting.
Yeah, right. So I'm
I think
going
that's a
to
good
make a
point.
motion
Yeah.
that we approve the minutes of June 15th as presented.
Second.
Are there any corrections or adjustments? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Oh, sorry.
Opposed? Abstained.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Okay, Karen?
I guess the only comment I would have made was, I understand if you read them and you understand them, but then
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
comment if
I don't know.
It actually
correct.
happened.
Correct.
Yeah,
Right.
We should
exactly.
find, yeah, that's
You
true.
can't validate
We should
that
find,
they're
Tom
accurate.
Hurley was very adamant
I
about
have a
it.
copy of Robert's rules,
I
which
don't know.
Ellen gave me.
Yeah,
I'd be
maybe
happy to
somebody can
vote it out.
interpret it, yeah.
I want to
Yeah,
know.
Anybody
Find
wanna
any
do it?
typos back, that's all I want to know.
yeah.
All right.
What?
Find any typos, that's all I want to know.
Item
I
6
didn't read them, I don't have to
is
vote on them.
discussion of FY19 budget parameters. We put this in there because we had a meeting about, we always want to let people know, let the boards and commissions know what our feelings are moving forward. And I think we always come to the same understanding, keep them as low as you can. But I guess we wanted to, I don't know, are you looking for a percentage? I mean, Sandy mentioned something about Board of Ed,
Yep.
2%.
Yep. I guess I feel that given what we ended up doing last year, that it is really, would be more responsible for us to have a discussion about what we see as our end result for the budget and really make suggestions to boards, commissions, and departments about how to look at their budget going forward and what types of things we would like them to entertain, how we would like them to look for it. I think for the Board of Ed, we can't make those suggestions necessarily. We can give them a number. And I think that that number will help guide them in terms of how they look at what their expenses are. I think the Board of Ed will also need to understand what to do with their technology requests, since there seemed to be some confusion last year.
So anybody have any comments?
Yeah,
Again, it's, we've always, our boards and commissions, I've always felt are responsible, they're
Right.
aware of our situation. Again, I mean, this is even tougher, the way things are going at the state level. And
Right.
it's even, and again, we're operating this year with a really tight budget. There's not a whole lot of room in there with now a $185,000 contingency fund, not a whole lot of room for projects.
I can make a comment.
Yes.
I think what would be helpful for you is, so I have a projection of, I could pretty much tell you, where we're going to be next year, assuming there are no program changes. I'm working with the business managers at Beecher and Amity to see if they have a projection for next year, and I can put something together to show you, give you an idea of where we would be, assuming there are no program changes in capital, some assumption on capital. Just to give you an idea, hopefully for your September meeting,
Yeah.
where it looks like. And then hopefully we'll find out by state revenue by then.
And I think it would be helpful to share, especially for our new members, with the original submission of the budget. okay, where were the increases?
Yeah, okay.
And how is it distributed
Mhm.
between education,
Right. Right.
capital?
Yeah, from last year
and-
into this year.
from
Yeah, I
last
could do
year.
that, yeah.
Well, the other good news too is if the state does pass a budget, when they pass a budget, it's 2 years. So we should know for
For next
18 and
year.
19,
Yeah, yeah.
assuming there's no disasters and they start cutting that budget, which could happen. Hopefully we'll have a budget for the next, when we sit down and work on the 18-19 budget, we'll know what the state's going to give us.
Right. But I think that we know that we want to keep the budget under 2%. And that needs to be really clear. And obviously, there are salary increases that were not in last year's budget. They're going to push those numbers over, which means that you have to look at other sources of cutting back. And I think that message really needs to be clear. And I think we can make some very concrete suggestions about how departments and boards and commissions take a look at the operations that they're responsible for. And I think there's opportunities to consolidate services across town units. I know there's an IT committee. That committee needs to really come forward with their recommendations about what to do. I don't think we need separate people in fire, police, and the town. There has to be a way to combine those. I think we provide programs and services that cost the town real money, that service a very, very small number of people. And we need to look at whether or not we should continue to provide those services. And this goes across all of our departments. So that's just a place to start. I'm sure other people have other suggestions in terms of what to look at.
All right, so then more to come.
I mean, does anybody have any other thoughts? All right, well, I'll come up with more then.
Sandy has her own ideas about
Yeah.
guidance.
I mean, I think, maybe that's fine for today, and
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
bring this up again
Sure.
when Tony actually...
We can have it as a regular item on every agenda
Yes.
as you go forward.
Absolutely.
How's that? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think if some of these decisions are driven by numbers, it's actually easier to make the case to either stop providing certain services or to consolidate and look at opportunities. And I mean, I know that you work with the two school systems to see what can we do in terms of consolidation, but maybe there are additional opportunities that we haven't thought about.
Right.
And I do think that we need to give some direction to the Board of Ed. I mean, my suggestion was 2%. That's what they have to come in, or lower. But that we really won't entertain anything that's greater than 2%.
Which, for those of you who don't know, last year
It was 4
4.5.
plus, yeah. And that's the largest increase we had
And I
seen in
made
a
it-
long, long
And I made it
time.
abundantly clear that it's not sustainable. We just can't keep coming up with 4% a year, 4.5% a year.
Right.
So-
And then there are ways for them to look at efficiencies. I really think there are.
But what drove that?
So part of it was salaries. It was just continuing everything the way it had been. They do very conservative budgeting, and they may need to take some risks. Look, I'm really impressed that they were able to bring in the budget where they did. It was very impressive given where they were, 3/4 of the way even through the year. But it also, and you can't always anticipate a lot of those savings. So when they do their budget, they don't know who's going to retire the next year. There were electricity savings because of all of the improvements we made in the infrastructure of the school. So all those things contributed to providing the money to cover the special education deficit. But they need to look at what their programmatic model is and how to continue to fund it. And they need an impetus, I think, to be able to really look at that from a different vantage point, that it's not just business as usual.
Well, we, for our capital budget, we usually send out end of September. We send out information at the end of September and direction to departments.
Yep.
And operating budget's usually in October. So by that time, it would be helpful to have some
Yeah.
Okay.
specific
So at our
guidelines that we
September
can
meeting.
put in a memo or
Okay.
some communication that could give some real, whether it's procedural thing, new process. We want departments to come up with analysis of their top 5 or programs by number, whatever, some sort of.
Okay.
You know,
Well, you can also put suggestions on the table too,
Yeah.
Tony, in
Yeah.
terms of,
I've got some
what you've
suggestions.
seen and what
Yeah.
you'd like to do.
Mhm.
But I do think we need to make a decision for Beecher also, where do their technology costs actually go? In capital or in operating?
I think we determined operating. There was an issue of some other things they put in capital, which I didn't necessarily agree with, and you kind of did agree with. So, as far as I was concerned, they put in some things, if you remember, in capital.
They took the
took the
actual
computers
computers,
out, right.
and those are in operating.
Those went into operating.
And they left the system infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
in capital. Because I was under the impression that's what we had decided last year, and that's the direction I gave them. So if we're going to change that, then we need to do that now,
Okay.
so they know
Right.
where
'Cause
those
their capital-
dollars
they'll
are
get their
going to
capital
be.
budget information, like I said, the end of September. So.
But clearly, one of the areas that we can talk about is capital. I'm not talking about
Oh,
Beecher.
yeah.
In general, you got to let people know that with the tight budget year that we're having year after year,
Yep.
if you really don't need it, it's probably not going to get approved. So
Right.
be careful with that. So.
Okay.
All right. As far as we talked about meetings, so for Andy and I think
Susan and Tom.
Susan knows and Susan understands Tom. We meet the third Thursday of every month, and generally we're out of here in an hour. We don't meet in August, so we're not going to see you again unless something happens with this budget where we have to get together and vote on
Right.
how we're going to cover it.
Okay.
In November, usually in November and December, we have 2 capital budget meetings where they basically discuss with us we get fed then. So every now and then we join the Board of Selectmen with food. And then in January, we have 3 meetings, 3 budget hearings where all the departments come and present their budgets. And then we meet one more time to formulate our recommendations, that's usually in March, to formulate our recommendations to the budget hearing, which is usually the April 17th, 18th, 19th, something like that. And then we have the town meeting, which is sometime in May. So that's it. But our monthly meetings usually aren't that long, so you can count on that. Okay, first selectmen's report, and I was remiss in not welcoming Beth.
Oh, that's
You know,
okay.
I've talked to her
Thank
so
you.
many times since,
Yeah.
but this is Beth's first meeting
We're actually
as first selectman.
communicating a lot, which is,
Yeah.
I think, a good thing.
So Beth is going to
Yeah.
give her first selectmen's report.
My first
Your first selectmen's report.
And I've got, I'm not going to talk for 9 minutes, I promise.
Okay.
I'm going to keep you under. It's pretty brief because I called Matt today and I said, what specifically? And he said, pretty much, anything related to finance. And most of the stuff that the Board of Selectmen discussed, you voted on to approve, so I won't go over that again. As far as the selectmen, we met, the new board met once before we were sworn in to decide on boards and commissions, and pretty much every board and commission is filled, which I'm pretty pleased about. There's a lot of vacancies and it's all done. We got through that, and then our regular Board of Selectmen meeting on July 12th, other than budget items and discussion items, and 2 people from the public who came to speak about the mowing at the golf course. That's our, big thing to deal with right now. We're coming up with a plan for maintenance going forward of the club, and I think that's about it. I can't think of. There wasn't
I
too
vote
much.
for wildflowers.
You know what the original name of it was?
What?
Clover Hill Farm.
Oh,
In the
wow.
early 1900s.
Is that right?
And I drove over it I didn't drive over it, it sounds bad. Adam took me on a tour. It's covered with clover. And
Really?
he's actually thinking of seeding it going forward with lots of dark, it's a dark colored clover, which will cut down the grass. Keep it in
Oh, wow.
clover. Apparently, if you have a lot of clover, you don't have grass, which pretty much what my front lawn looks like. So,
I think it's important that we get rid of country club.
Yeah,
It
That's
is
why
not-
I'm.
it is not a
right.
country club
It's
anymore.
not, so I've been kind of calling it Clover Hill.
Nor will it ever
for lack
be
of a
again.
better word. Right, no.
Once you've lost those fairways and greens,
Mhm.
that you're not cutting them, you're not returning them to
So we have
their,
a lot of work to do on the
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen going
Yeah.
forward. We're going to work hard. So I'll keep you informed as we make decisions.
okay.
Thank you.
Liaison reports, again, I ask, usually keep it to as much financial, anything that impacts finances, that's what we should talk about, so. I have nothing, I do Amity did not meet. Paul, do you have anything?
Yeah, I didn't give a report the last time. I was able to go to the June meeting, not the July meeting. But as of the June meeting, the Fire Commission is working on the specs for Engine 3. They were expecting them to be completed July 1st or so. And that's really all I have that's of any interest.
Okay.
And library did not meet, and the Amity, the Woodbridge Board of Ed
Woodbridge.
Finance Committee did not meet either.
Okay. That's good. Okay, as far as, again, we all liaison a board or two or whatever, so, by the Amity Finance Committee bylaws indicate that the chairman of the three boards of finance should be on there, so that's me, and I'll continue to do it, believe me, it's a lot of time, so.
We're happy to have you do
Yeah,
that.
I'll continue to do that. Sandy, do you do, we're going to give priority to those, you want to stay on,
I'm happy to stay on the Board of Beecher
okay.
Finance Committee.
And Paul has asked if he could do police. And if you don't mind, Paul, in addition to that, the EMS commission usually falls under that.
Sure.
They meet three or four times a year, I think.
Quarterly.
4 times?
Quarterly.
Yeah, they meet quarterly, and it's just to review numbers, so. Which leaves Fire Commission, Human Services, Library, Recreation. Does anybody have any requests that they'd like to be on?
I'm happy to stay on library.
You want to do Library?
I'm happy to do either fire or human services. You tell me.
I don't know.
I'll do fire.
Do you have any preference, Andy?
Recreation?
Recreation really needs somebody because David King was our recreation, and unfortunately, David, as you know. So they haven't had any, I tried to go to a few meetings, but if you don't mind, we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, wait, I'd rather not have Tom do fire, because.
I said I would do
Susan,
fire.
you do fire? Okay.
Right. Tom's gonna.
I wouldn't have taken that.
I figured as much.
So recreation is Andy, so you want to do human services, Tom?
Sure.
I did that at one point, that's a good one. We do. Okay, so we got all those, Karen? Okay. Designation of Board of Finance representative to Investment Committee, I've been doing it right along, if someone would like to
Keep
do it.
doing it.
Okay. That's another quickie.
Which one was that one?
Huh?
Which one was that?
Investment Committee, it's where we meet and talk about, basically,
It's quarterly.
three funds.
There's 3 trust funds.
We have 3 trust funds. It's OPAB,
Yeah,
OPAB,
it wasn't on.
Library and the cemetery.
yeah.
It's on 10, number 10.
I'll continue on that, so. I guess that's it. so.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
The September meeting, the 21st, that happens to be Rosh Hashanah, Jewish holiday.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you're going to have a quorum.
What do we do on that?
I'm just pointing it out.
How did you do that?
You might have, yeah, usually you do.
Because we
mean
put
meeting
it in our.
today?
we put
So
it
it's
in
a different
our
night?
January. So,
Check it
I'll
out.
check it out and let you.
Just let me know what it is so I can get it on my
She
calendar.
usually does, yeah, she usually does.
I figured,
Karen usually
Yeah.
does. take care of
but
that.
it's not in my calendar, so I don't know.
So, actually, so that's another thing, Karen, can you send us the list of dates? Sure.
Perfect, yeah.
For
That'd be
this
helpful.
year, that would be really helpful.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Okay, now I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.